In this video, we're going to solve for any property of a circle. And to accomplish this, first is determining the circumference of a circle from the radius. And this here is how the question will look like. Given the radius, what is the perimeter of the circle? Now, the radius that is given in this shape here is 3.95, and the solution to this question here implies the following. We know that the radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the outside distance around the circle, and this here, the C, which represents the circumference of the circle. Now, to determine the circumference of the circle, which is also the same thing as a perimeter, we need to know the formula, and the formula here is that the circumference is equal to 2 times the pi times the radius. Take note that this symbol here, which represents pi, means that it is the number, which is a continuous number, 3.14. There are more digits after 4, but we're going to stick with this particular number here. And therefore, when we are going to solve for circumference, we know that we're going to multiply 2 by pi, which is 3.14, and we multiply that by the radius, which is given in the question to be 3.95 meters. And once you multiply those numbers, we arrive at our circumference of the circle, which is in this case distance around the circle, to be equal to 24.81 meters. So this here is one question that you're going to be coming across when it comes to relating your radius to the perimeter or the circumference of the circle. Now, the next one is going from the diameter to the circumference of a circle, and here is how a question would look like, where you're given the diameter to be 7.6 meters and you're asked to find the perimeter of the circle. Now, the solution includes the following. We know that the diameter is the same thing as the distance from one end of the circle to the other end through the center. And this here, we need to determine the circumference of the circle. Now, what we know is that we can determine the circumference by multiplying R2 by pi times the radius. But take note here that the radius can be related to the diameter, because if you have from the center to one of the end of the circumference, that is the radius, but you multiply the radius by 2, that gives you the diameter. Therefore, these two here and our radius, the multiplication, will be taken away and will be replaced by the letter D. And take note that our pi is equal to 3.14, and here by solving for our circumference, we multiply our pi, which is 3.14, by the 7.9, which is our diameter, which is given meters, and this here we arrive at our same value for the circumference to be 24.81 meters, which is indeed the distance around the circle, other known as the circumference of the circle or the perimeter of the circle. Now, next is how about we're going from the circumference to the radius and determine the diameter of a circle. And this is how a question will look like, where you're given the perimeter, which is in this case the circumference to be 24.81 meters, and you are going to determine what the radius is and then what is the diameter of the circle. Now, first is that we need to know the same formula, which is multiply R2 by pi and by the radius, which gives you the circumference. And I position this differently here because we need to determine what the radius is by moving the other values to the other side of the equal sign that will be operated onto our circumference. Therefore, what that happens is that where we know that our pi is equal to 3.14, therefore we have our expression for our radius to be equal to the circumference divided by 2 pi, which also means that we're going to have a circumference and divided by the product of our 2 times the pi. So therefore, First step is multiply your 2 by pi, and that gives you your 2 times 3.14 as the denominator, and our numerator will be the circumference, which is 24.81 meters. Therefore, our radius will be this value divided by the product of these two numbers, and that gives us our radius to be 3.95 meters, which is the distance from the center to the outside of the circle. Now, the other part here is what is the diameter of the circle. We know that the diameter is 2 times the radius. Therefore, we have our diameter to be 2 times, we know our radius when we determine it to be 3.95 meters. Therefore, our diameter is equal to 7.9 meters, which is the distance from one end of the circle to the other end through the center of the circle. Now, next is how about we go from the diameter to the area of a circle. And so to accomplish this, here we are given the diameter of the circle to be 7.9 meters when we know that our area of a circle is equal to pi times the radius squared, where we know that our pi is equal to 3.14. This radius squared means what? That we are multiplying the radius by the radius, and then your answer you multiply by pi. Take note here that to find the radius, we need to first use the diameter by dividing your diameter by 2, and that will give us our answer to be equal to 3.95 meters, which is the distance from the center to one of the ends of the circle. Therefore, using this as our radius and putting it into this equation, we're going to determine our equation to look like this, where our pi is 3.14 multiplied by our radius, which is 3.95 meters, times the radius again, which is 3.95 meters. Therefore, we're going to arrive at our area of the circle to be equal to approximately 49 meters squared. Now, how about we have this here when it comes to going from the area back to the radius of the circle? Now, there are two methods that you can go, and the method for the first one implies that, hey, how about you just do this step by step? And what does that mean? For the solution here, we know that the area is 49 meters squared, but we need to determine the radius of the circle, which is from the center to the outside of the circle. Therefore, using this equation, which is our pi times the radius squared is equal to the area, we need to first move our pi to the other side of the equal sign, which means that instead of multiplying, the opposite is going to be division. Therefore, when we know that our pi is equal to 3.14, that means that our radius squared will be equal to the area divided by the pi, which is 3.14. Therefore, our area, which is 49 divided by 3.14, that will give us the radius squared, and therefore we're going to do the opposite of a squared, which means we're going to do the square root of the result, which is 15.61 meters squared, and by doing the square root of that number, we're going to get our radius to be 3.95 meters. On the other hand, how about the second method? We take everything in one shot, which means that once we know our area to be this value and we need to determine what the radius is, we use our equation, which is a radius which equals to the square root inside is to be the area divided by what pi, which is 3.14. Therefore, doing this, we know that our 49 will be divided by 3.14, and then your answer, you do the square root of the result, and take note that the answer of the square root must be a positive value, and the result unit must be in meters, not meters squared anymore, because that square root is going to be affecting the meter squared, which means the square and the square root cancels out in the meter unit. Therefore, our radius is going to be 3.95 meters. So I hope you found this really informative in terms of how to determine various variables in the particular shape circle. On our future videos, we're going to look at how we can go from the area all the way to the circumference of the circle, which means you have to develop all these skills when it comes to problem solving and practicing to get yourself comfortable with this process. Hope to see you on the next video. Stay smart as always and believe in yourselves.